We are recording.
Thank you everyone for joining this workshop today about successful transitions, all about the handover for the incoming and the outgoing officers in the district and also at club level. Welcome everybody today. It's great seeing you all on screen. This recording is being recorded. This workshop is being recorded. So for those who aren't able to make it today, you will be able to catch up at another time and be able to watch it. So thank you for attending, but thank you particularly for taking on leadership this year, a leadership role. It's not an easy year to be doing it. As you probably know, there's a little thing called a pandemic that's happening out there that's making our lives a little bit difficult at the moment. And not everybody might be willing to step up into a leadership role at these times. So if you're doing that, you've got true leadership at your heart or in your heart, and it's fabulous you're doing that. So I, as the incoming district director, certainly thank you for taking on the roles, whether it be at club, area, division, or another district sort of role. Now, I will point out today, to make sure no one is confused, this is not a club officer training. It's not a COT. And it's not a DOT, the district officer training either. There's separate events that are happening and I'll talk about them later. This 1 hour workshop is all around understanding the process around a transition, a good transition, and looking at some of the best practices that we can employ when we're doing those transitions and handovers. There is a framework that I will be sharing later in this session. So towards the end, there's a document that's been produced to help you, that has a bit of a framework to help you do those handovers in a successful way. Now, this is suitable for both incoming officers and also outgoing officers. Some of the questions that I'll be asking or we'll be talking about will be directed at perhaps one or the other. But if I'm doing it about what are you going to tell an incoming person as a question or a topic, please, for those incoming people, think it from the point of view, okay, what do I need to ask that outgoing person? That way, it's not one-sided. You've got the incoming person thinking about, okay, what are the things I need to know? What do I need to ask? And hopefully this session will help you, as well as the outgoing person thinking, what do I need to be telling that incoming person? So two-way thinking, two-way communication flow there. Now it is interactive. So I know some of you might be a bit cold with your power being out and all that. So this is going to give you a chance to be writing and doing some things or tapping on the computer if you've got a laptop there, just to keep your mind going and also your hands and fingers getting them warm. Now, unfortunately, we're not face-to-face. Normally we would do this sort of thing in a venue where we're all together, and really it would be a nice interactive situation. We can't do that as much at the moment, but we can do it on screen the best as we can. So I call those type of venues when we get together a bit of a cafe situation where we can sit down and rather than me just being a talking head, we can do a little bit of interactive conversation there. So I'm looking at everybody on this workshop today on the screen to be sharing some of their thoughts and experiences as we're going along as well. So being that cafe environment, please feel free to have your tea, your coffee there in front of you. Nip up now if you need to quickly make one. If it's a bottle of scotch that gets you through these workshops, then please do that. I have my water here. I like to hydrate as much as possible when I'm doing workshops, etc. And as I said, there will be a resource that will be shared at the end for you to take away. And today we'll be starting some of that to get you going, but there'll be the full resource to share at the end. So let's get started. I've talked a little bit there. My question to you to start off is, and please just open your mics and jump in. There's not too many people on the screen. What is the difference between a transition and a handover? What's the difference between a transition and a handover?
Transition takes time. A handover just happens over like.
Absolutely. So we'll be using both terms today, but generally think of a transition being for a longer period of time and a handover tending to be an event, or maybe one or two events, which is a lot more compressed and a short time. So we're going to be talking about things from a transition perspective here. And the other question, let's get people warmed up now. I'm really interested to hear some of the stories that you might have about experiences with transitions or handovers. Can you give me, anybody, an experience where you had a transition or a handover that you thought went really well? And why did you think it went really well?
I have to say, as the incoming VP, I had a very good transition and handover from the outgoing VP. I got given a lot of documentation to read. Any assistance or help or any questions that I needed to ask, I could ask them. So it was a very good knowledge base of what the role entailed.
Fabulous. Good. Thank you, Eleanor. Anybody else?
Our club last year, we had a changing over.
Sorry, Joy, can you bring your mic to, that's it.
Forgot about that. Yeah, our club, we had a very efficient secretary come treasurer. And as well as moving to an online documentation of all our stuff, which was very efficient. So it was all put online, put onto a USB stick, all the roles. She actually put everybody's roles together, all our club business together, put it on a USB stick, which was provided to the incoming members. But she sat down, because she was just so efficient, she sat down with a new incoming secretary treasurer over, I believe it's 3 or 4 sessions, and worked with her, sat with her at our committee meetings, forthcoming committee meetings. So her transition took about a month to follow through. So shadowed her, was there to answer questions, to refer her back to her record of information. And this year, that transition has been the smoothest transition I've seen in our club over the 20 years that I've been there. It was just because of her organisation, that one person's organisation, documenting, being able to talk, have everything written, chuck it into your, rather than hard copies, chuck a USB and just work through whatever, all the roles, whatever it was. But the secretary treasurer transition was the smoothest that I've seen.
Yes, and you do notice the difference, don't you, Joy, between one that's not so good compared to one that is, or one that's not so organised. So there was a lot of things, and I hope some people are taking notes here. There was multiple contact points there, multiple handover connections through that transition that went on, I think Joy said, for a month. There was a mention there of giving a USB stick with all resources on. So that's an ongoing resource that the incoming person can refer to. Maybe templates, could be dates, could be a wide range of things. So very useful. And third thing that I picked up there was the shadowing the role. Now, we have different types of roles in Toastmasters in the district. Through club officer, there's different club officers, through to district officers, there's different district officers. So there's going to be different tasks, different requirements, different expectations, and there's different dates required around certain things, and also different templates that are used. So for each of the roles that you are outgoing or you're incoming for, think about all the things related to that role that may be useful going onto a USB stick or a file that's sent to somebody via email. And also if it would be really beneficial for you to have the incoming person shadow. So there's some good points there. Let's have one more of a good transition.
Carl?
Yep, Graham.
My club keeps all the documents in PDF form or Word form in a Dropbox, and every executive member has got access to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we just simply have to give the new executive members access to the Dropbox, and they can see all the documents going back as far as they like about the club. And I guess they just need to be guided through that by their predecessor.
Yeah, and
so we're not passing pieces of paper around or USBs or anything else. it's all in one centralized repository.
Yes, and that's even better, Graham. Absolutely, well organized. Nothing's going to be lost. And also, it's not a one-off. It's not passing just to that person. It's a resource and a mechanism that can be used time and time again for when the next person comes in and the next person after that. So that club obviously has thought about that and the most efficient and effective way of passing information for all those roles. And they're doing it through that centralized way of keeping that information. So that's an excellent idea. Thank you for that, Graham.
Like Graham, we've moved from the USB. We've now, our techno savvy members in our new committee have, rather than using Dropbox, we've just gone to a Google Docs type thing, but it's exactly the same thing, central repository. So it's recorded and there's no lost info.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's look at the other side of the coin. Does anybody have any bad handovers? Not mentioning any names or any positions, just keep it nice and general so no one can go back and see. But any, well, I won't say horror stories, but anything where you didn't really get much of a one, if at all, that you'd like to share so we know what not to do. Do we have any confessions?
Conversely, I'll go first. A non-handover from a whole committee. Basically, the outgoing committee, it was just terrible. So the incoming committee was left with nothing, effectively, except oral advice from a dinosaur about where things were and where things sat. It was probably the bottomest pit, lowest level that our club had ever reached in its history, and it just no communication whatsoever.
And how did that make you feel, Joy?
For somebody who had decided to step backwards at the club, it pretty peeved me off because we were flying pretty well. It forced me to go, suck it up, princess. You're going to have to step back in, because I was the oracle of the knowledge, the longest serving member. All the stuff had gone. And it was like, this is never going to be repeated again, ever. We've got to find ways of dealing with it, because it basically destroyed temporarily not just the actual existence of our club, but the culture that we've built up in our club.
Thank you, Joy. I'm glad you raised that. So it's not just the uncertainty and confusion because you don't know what to do. So the more functional, task-orientated side of a changeover. But as Joy's just mentioned, it's also the actual culture, the morale of the club. If no one seems to know what's going on and no one has had that perhaps caring of the new person to come in, that's really been reflected like a ripple through the club. And that shouldn't be happening in any state that we're in. And when I don't mean physical state, I mean state in the way the world is at the moment, but particularly during a pandemic where it's bad enough and confusing enough out there at the moment, we need to be keeping the morale up. So it's so important that we do good transitions and changeover for that side, because it's not just the individual we're dealing with here, there's ripples that affect the club as well. So thank you for that, Joy. Jules, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did, but I had second thoughts.
Okay. Well, yes, you don't have to confess anything that you don't want to here. It's a safe environment, but it's okay. Morella, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I did. I had a situation where my handover, I'm going back a few years, but it was overwhelm of information, like files upon files of information with no understanding or backup behind it. So no sort of time taken to explain when you would start something, when you would call out for this or for that. It was just, here are the minutes, here are this, here are that. And it was all very well and good, but it wasn't backed up with any actual knowledge, which left me feeling a bit cold, you know, and that person felt that they'd done the handover.
Right, okay. So do you think in that case it may have been a lack of awareness or knowledge about how to do a transition, Or is it more just a personal style?
Oh, I hope it's not a personal style. I'm thinking lack of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
That because you hand over information on a USB, you've done your bit. So I don't know what that person's agenda was or what the problem was, but it was quite strange. And you try to contact that person and, you know, whatever. But yeah, I felt that was really strange and really odd, and it just left you, you know, in exactly the same spot as not having a handover, just pedaling fast, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is as well, as we've just mentioned, it affects the individual, and there could be more than one transition going on in the club. Well, there will be. If that's happening across a couple of members, it affects those members, it affects the club, but also against those ripples. When you have guests coming to your club and it's during a transition period, if everybody's confused, the morale's down, they don't know, the guests are going to see that. And as you can probably guess from that, they're not going to join the club. They're going to look for somewhere else that is a lot more organized and the morale and the spirits are up. So it may seem that a transition is only a small thing. Oh yes, I'll just give somebody this on the USB, have a couple of words and it's done. It actually needs to have quite a bit of thought put into it to make sure it's done properly, and you get that continuity of excellence, if you like, with the club. So we'll keep on going now. There'll be a little bit more interaction a bit later. I want to be covering some best practices and definitions to begin with. So first off, I'm going to be reading from the resource that I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit later, just to emphasize some of the things we've already talked about. So a role transition is providing a supportive handover from the current person in the role to the new incoming person. So the handover includes the functional requirements, which is the tasks, the resources, and the expectations. But also we should be passing on our current role holders' experience. That's experience that you've had in the 12 months that you've been in that role. So the transition may be of different lengths, time lengths, as we've talked about, because it depends on the complexity of the role. Some roles may have a lot more complexity around it than others. It may be based on the competencies of the new person coming in. They may already have a lot of that knowledge and skill sets, or it may be that they don't. So it may require a little bit of a longer handover, and also the prior work experience. If someone does that outside and they're coming in Toastmasters doing it, they've kind of got it. They just need to understand how Toastmasters does it. If it's someone who's been in a role or an adjacent role where they've seen it, they may kind of know what's going on. So then the handover perhaps doesn't need to be as nuts and bolts as someone who hasn't had that before or is new to Toastmasters and is perhaps the first time moving into these roles. So as we've talked about, the role transition is really important. It's a way of capturing what we'll look at a little bit later as we move forward is a transition plan. And this will be part of the resource. And it's a way of capturing the information in an organized way that you need to pass on. It makes sure that your successors have a strong start, because remember, strong start means that the club is having a strong start as well. And you want to make sure that the transition plan is helping you facilitate this. So let's look at some best practices. Here's 10 points I've got around best practice that I just want to cover with you. And the first is around leadership. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this over the next 12 months as the incoming district director. A leader helps build other leaders. And you are all leaders if you're already in a club or district role at the moment. Now, there's 3 levels, if you like. Let's keep it simple. 3 levels, and it comes often down to experience and intent for a leader. The first is when they focus on themselves. Now, that might be because they like the sound of the role and all the power trips that come with it, but we'll say that doesn't happen in Toastmasters. But what we will say is maybe it's someone who's focusing on themselves because they just want to try and get everything right. So that's the first level. The second level includes that wanting to get everything right and focusing on yourself. But the second level then looks at the clients, the customers, the members, the users of who you are actually serving. So it starts to look at that side of it, which is good. That's really where you want to be. But level 3, and this is where you get the real leaders starting to excel, is when they look at the other people around them, their colleagues, who they are developing as leaders. And that's what we want here. We want that third level to come into play with our leaders in District 73. We need to be looking around us at our colleagues, and when we're visiting other clubs, to see who's potential leaders and helping them move up and shining themselves with their ability to learn and develop and grow other people. But you need to be doing that as well. And particularly during this transition time, when there's new leaders coming on board, you need to be giving them that focus, not just yourself, not just our members, but also those new leaders coming on board. And some people even start, as soon as they get that person's name, they don't even wait for a handover, they're already starting that initial or pre-contact contact with people to make sure that they're easing them into the role really nicely. So you want to make sure that as a leader, you are conducting handovers that are well planned. So you want to give that person who's coming in the best chance that they can have. And as Joy has just said, and as Morella's just said that, where they didn't perhaps have the best handovers, if you've experienced that, we want to make sure that doesn't happen for the person who's coming into your role after you. You can learn from that, what someone didn't do well, and make sure that you do it better this time around. So that's the first point. Remember, a leader builds other leaders. It is our responsibility to do that. The second thing, and this was mentioned, I think Jan mentioned this right off, a handover is not a one event. It's not a one-off event. We're talking about a transition here. And that transition may occur over a period of time, depending on how much information and how organized you are and how confident the person is. Some people require a little bit more of hand-holding at the beginning than others. So you need to suss that out. It's like being a mentor in your clubs for new members when they join, and you take them through pathways and how the club works and how Toastmasters works. Some people are quite confident and some people require a little bit more hand-holding there. We're all different. So remember, a handover is not a one-off event. Thirdly is a transition plan. Now, a transition plan will make sure that you don't forget anything. As I said, we can do this over a period, but it's best that we don't think 6 weeks down the track, oh yeah, that was another thing I meant to tell you. It's good to get all those things out the way as soon as possible. There's a lot of things that can need to be covered in a transition, and a plan will help you capture them on a piece of paper or a computer file, and then it's a nice organized way for you to be able to then transfer that information across to the incoming person. Now, number 4 I've got here. Remember, I mentioned before that we need to look at the functional side, the tasks, the responsibilities, and the expectations. But there's another side as well. This is the knowledge and the insights that you've picked up in that role during the year. So you should be, in the most positive way, share your insights and experience during that year. What did you gain in that role and find out that would be useful to the incoming person? And let's throw it to the room now to get some thoughts about that. Putting aside the functional tasks in the role that you've had this year, what are some personal insights and experience that you think the incoming person should know?
Carl, I'd have to say having to organize everything during COVID, and considering that we've been coming in and out of lockdown, that creating a succession plan of what to organize through a COVID lockdown, like club online contests, how to do Zoom meetings, all the ins and outs of what needs to be organized and how much time need to be allocated to make sure all that can actually happen.
Yes. Thank you, Eleanor. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yeah, Jan? Yep, Jan.
I found because of lockdown and because we haven't been together, I've put more effort into connecting to people, like ringing people and saying hello. Because when you're in the room together, it's a real connection, and we haven't had that. So I've found that making the effort to contact different members has been useful.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. And we've had 2 mentions there, particularly of the COVID situation. Yeah, there may be different personal insights and learnings that you've got during this time that is important to share as compared to what it might be during a normal standard year. So that's very good. Now, Jules, I saw you had a hand up again. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or that's not the old one. Yep. Okay.
No, thanks, Carl. I think it's really important that you actually reach out and say, look, I'm here for you. Basically, if you have any issues. And I think it's really important to actually discuss any issues that you had during your term. They might come across that as well. And I think just that connection that, you're not all on your own, basically.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. The good point. In Toastmasters, we are supportive here. We operate in a supportive environment. I mean, everybody has bad days, I know, but overall, we operate in a supportive environment. So when we're doing a transition like that, that phrase, I'm here to support you, I've got your back, I'm not just leaving the role, it's now yours during this transition period until you become your own person around it. I'm here for you. So I think that's a really supportive phrase to be using. So thanks, Jules. Graham, you had a hand up?
Yes, back to the old theme of a centralised repository of information. We use Easy Speak. Is anyone here from a club that doesn't use it? Oh, you poor unfortunate people. I don't know how you can operate without it. It again gives you a centralized repository of information that is available for all members to see, and executive members get to see a bit more than the ordinary members. And so people will be familiar with the sort of records that are available there and what's kept. And it is just so easy. The person I'm handing over to as VPE will have served as Toastmaster of the day for meetings and would have had to gone through a whole lot of things that they'll do along with other things as VPE. So it's really good in that respect. And that supplementing what we keep in our Dropbox, where we have minutes of meetings and all the membership applications and things like that, bank statements, it really means that it's very easy. You're not handing over physical artifacts and chasing people down to give them things. It's all there. You just give them the link and access to get into things and they can do it.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I think you're going to get the battle of the ages here, because you may get another response from the other side. So I see a few hands going up. I'm going to go to Vicky first, and then I'll go to Sue. So Vicky first.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that I think that when we're doing a transition or a handover, that we remember that what we're trying to give is give the person is the skills and information that they can use to fill the role. When we got to help them, assist them, be there where if they need us, but at some point we have to step away and allow them to do the role and remember that it's not our role anymore. And yeah, that's something that we've been talking about as district directors and learning, is eventually stepping away. We're not there to continually prop the person up. So I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that we want to give them all the skills they need, and then they can do the role.
Yes, thank you, Vicky. And I was going to cover that later, but we'll cover it now because you've brought it up very coherently there. And that is correct. There's a transition period that goes on, and it may be over a period of time, but we also have to let go of that role. And that's why it's important to do a good handover and a good transition, so the new person coming in does have all the information, has those insights, and then it's up to them to run it. And it may be they're going to do it slightly different to the way you're doing it. And a really good example at the high level is district directors. Each district director that comes on has their own leadership style, their own strategic things that they want to be focusing on, and it's only for 12 months. So the previous people in that role or other roles, and I will be the same, need to, after that changeover period or that transition period, let go and let the person shine in their own way and bring you fresh thoughts and ways of doing it. So that's very important. Be there and have their back as required, but there's also a point where you need to let go and let that person become their own person. Sue, did you want to add to something?
Yes, three things. The first is the immediate past president in club level is meant to be your support for that year. So as an overview, they're meant to attend those club officer executive meetings and making sure that they're there to help guide and support, but let the team move on. The second thing was to do with the timeline in the club leader handbook and the district leader handbook. There is a timeline of when things are due. And if you are unsure of anything, it's all in that handbook anyway. So just use that as your guide and your resource and make sure you definitely review the timeline. The third thing is Free Toast Host is the only transition sort of program. Easy Speak is not promoted by Toastmasters International, but Free Toast Host is. So if you're on Free Toast Host, that is promoted by Toastmasters International, and you do have a link to the world because they allow you to have a website when you go to find a club and you're looking for anything to do with the clubs. Free Toast Host has the ability to be able to store files. It is the ability for everyone in the world to see who you are. And Free Toast Host is the only site that is sponsored by Toastmasters International. Easy Speak is something different. It still is used throughout the world with some clubs, but it is definitely not promoted by Toastmasters International in any way.
Okay, thank you, Sue. There's some good pickups there. I'm not going to enter the debate of the two platforms, which is best here, because we have champions on both sides, and that will be another workshop, not this workshop. So thank you, everybody who inputted on that. I'm going to keep moving because we've got a bit more to get through. Number 5 on the best practice is to be upfront with what didn't go well during the year for you in that role. We don't want to sugarcoat roles because there's things that perhaps didn't quite go well. Maybe there were some goals and planning for the club that you were part of that didn't happen. Whatever it is, let the new person come in and understand what those challenges you may have been encountering, because it gives that person then a better chance of being aware of them for a start, but preparing for them, and then potentially put something in place because they may have some other ideas or a different angle that they want to try to be able to deal with that. So there's always some things within the role that perhaps didn't go quite so well. Maybe you've gone hybrid now and your role in some way is involved with the hybrid side of things and there's some challenges there. Well, let them know because they may be able to do some research and talk to some other people and have a different idea to fix it. And that's the beautiful thing about having new leaders coming through. We have fresh eyes, fresh ideas, and fresh ways of looking at things to take some new action. Now, number 6 is role continuity. Highlight things that are currently underway with your role and need to continue. Now, this may be a role as part of the area or a division or even a club level where you've got goals and there's things that are still going on into the next year, let them know about that as well, because particularly if you've put a lot of hard work in during the year and they've started, you don't want them to fizzle out if they're still successful. Now, this is obviously a conversation as part of the new executive as well, but just let people know what has been going on and what is currently underway, and then they can be part of those conversations about how that is handled going forward. The other thing that was just mentioned here is read the Toastmasters International Club Officer Handbook and the District Officer Handbook. One of these. Now, this is an old copy I have here of the district one. There's a new district leaders handbook out, and it is a fabulous one. The resource that I'll be giving you at the end has links to these, so I'm not putting the links up now because you'll get a resource that has all these links in it. Please read them. A lot of the questions that you may be asked as you'll be asking as an incoming person, it's all in here. There's a lot of information in here, and as an outgoing person, make sure that you are letting them know and that you are encouraging the incoming people to read through this, particularly for the club one and really for the district officers as well. There are in sections, so you can really focus on your section and then just look at the other ones to get a general idea. If you don't have time to read the whole thing, but I do encourage you actually, because it is really good for you to understand how Toastmasters operates from a club level through to a district level. And also, if you do have aspirations to be moving up from perhaps a club officer into an area officer, an area into division, then it's a good idea to understand a little bit about it beforehand and what you might be wanting to put your hand up for in 12 months. So remember that, read the Toastmasters International Club Officer Handbook and the District Leaders Handbook as well. Number 8, and this has already been mentioned, make yourself accessible to the incoming person. Don't do, here's the USB stick, or here's the link to our centralized depository of information. There you go. You need to be around initially, particularly if the person's feeling a little uncertain and they're first time doing this and they're not really used to it. Now, you also have to be careful, as we talked about before, that the new person will probably want to do things their way. So when you're doing the transition, it's not stamping, this is what you must do because this is the way I did it. You need to be giving them the functional information, your insights and experiences, and they will then blend that in to their life experience and what they're trying to do with the role, along with what the executive and members are trying to do with that particular club. So please make yourself accessible for the people. Number 9, and this one is so important. Please, please register and turn up for club officer training and district officer training. Now, Graham, can you please put that link to our events calendar up in the chat? There is, for the club officer training, there is a lot of COTS, as we call them. There's the link going up. There's lots of COTS that's going to be happening over the next period. So if you can't make one, go along to another one. Those COTS have breakout rooms specifically to your role where you will learn all about the important aspects of your role, and also you'll be meeting other people and ones in your area, in fact, that are taking up that role as well. They're your peers. That is your network. So if you are feeling a bit stuck about something, or you want to find out something, or you want to actually collaborate with someone that at your role level, then there they are. They're going to be in that virtual room with you because it will be online at the moment. Please go along to that. And there's other sessions that will be happening as well that will be looking at things like how to run the Distinguished Club program, at marketing, how to build quality clubs, how to attract new people, how to retain people. And the COTS will be different in each division. Each division is holding it. A lot of the fundamental stuff will be the same, but some might be a bit different. So if you have the time, and I do encourage you, dip into some of those other COTS as well and have a look what they're doing. You cannot get too much information when it comes to building quality clubs and things like that, because you get some ideas. 1 or 2 ideas may come through from all that information. And the district officer training, that's on the 3rd and 4th of July. Make sure that you register and turn up for that. Now, details will be coming out about that in the very near future. You'll also get an email with the booklet and the agendas and all that. So stay tuned for that. But so important, they're designed to help you know all about your particular role, how you can benefit your members, your club, and Toastmasters International.
Carl, can I just ask a question? I know
Yeah.
I've raised this with you before, but I thought I'd just raise it again. One of the problems with having the first round of COT prior to the 1st of July is that we actually don't get a list of all the new club executive officers. So we can't actually then target specifically who needs to go along to the COT. So it makes it quite difficult to promote it in a way other than just doing a broad brush promotion to everyone within the division. So is there any way we can actually get access to the club office lists at some stage? Like everyone's meant to have actually put their lists in after, early May or mid-May, but then we just don't get access to it.
Yeah, I'll go with Vicky first and then go to Sue. So Vicky?
Nick, they're not there until after the 1st of July. You can't get access to them before that. You can contact the previous committee, the one that's in now, and you can say, can I please have a list of your incoming officers? But you won't get it off the TI website.
Yeah, no, I'm pointing out that puts a constraint from the point of view, if you want to run COT in June, you're actually running blind. So if you're going to do the first round of COT, you really should do it in July once you've actually got access to those club lists. Not
if you contact the current club officers now. They should be able to tell you who it is, the president.
But that's what I'm pointing out is that's a lot of work, as opposed to there's a report as a district officer. You've actually got a report where you can get a list of all the club officers in one report, and then you can actually contact all of those specific.
Yeah, you could get your area directors. They will know who the presidents are. And then
Nick, I just took the initiative in our club and advised all the incoming club officers to book for COT, told them where to go to book. It wasn't hard.
Thank you, Graham. I'm just going to go to Sue because I'm going to need to move on from this point. Sue, just quickly.
I'd like to reinforce what Vicky said. You definitely just engage with your area directors and ask them, you've got 4 clubs in your area, please supply the club officer lists. There's currently, if you look at the lists on Toastmasters International for District 73, there's probably 70 clubs that haven't even submitted their lists yet. So if you can see on that list who hasn't submitted, start chasing them up, because we can all see who hasn't put their list in, and that's available in other reports on the dashboard.
Fabulous, thank you. I'm going to move on because we've still got a bit more to get through. The final point I'd like to make out of best practice is that always remember the Toastmasters values. Now, what are the Toastmasters values? Can someone tell me?
Excellence.
Excellence is one of them.
Integrity.
Integrity is another.
Service and respect.
Service and respect. Oh, well done. I am very impressed. Very good. So we need to be always thinking about that when we're engaging in a handover. Toastmasters officers are leaders, as I mentioned before, and we should always act accordingly. So when we're doing a handover, we do it with integrity. We need to make sure that we are doing what we say we're going to do when we're doing a handover with people, and we do it from the best intent possible. Also, respect. We need to respect each other. So our incoming people, you need to be listening to the person in that role at the moment with their experience and what they've learned, and vice versa. We need to, as outgoing officers, be listening to the incoming person, their concerns and what they need to know, not brushing anything off. Service. Well, that speaks for itself. We're trying to serve our members, and a new person coming into that role is a member as well. So we want to be serving them. And the excellent bit, We want to be doing it as best we can. And again, I thank you for turning up to this session today, because you're obviously interested in making sure you're doing the best job with our handover for that person and also for your club. Now, let's move on a little bit to some more questions and answers. I have a question for you. And this is particularly for anybody who's been in an officer role this year, club or district, or may have been previously, or if you haven't, in any work situation where you've been a manager or a leader in some aspect, a team leader, whatever. My question to you is, how did you keep your energy and enthusiasm up during the year? How are you going to, or what are you going to give us a tip to the incoming person about how to keep the energy, enthusiasm about that role up during the year? Because, you know, things happen, lockdowns happen, etc., etc. What tips have you got for incoming people? So I can see some stuff coming in on the chat here. Please just call out. It's easier. What tips? And hopefully you have. Hopefully no one's burnt out and feeling really bad. Hopefully everybody's still got a bit of enthusiasm. How are you doing that, and how are you passing that over?
Oh, I'll have a crack first, if you like, Carl.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Joy.
Look, it's a bit difficult for me. I'm a very positive person, apparently. So the lessons I learned from others in the club is that even if everybody's down and out, apparently my positivity on everything is what keeps people going. So there's problems and challenges always, but instead of looking for the dark end of things and saying, well, woe is us, it's always find the silver lining and then enabling something to happen from that. So for me, I guess the learnings is that because I'm naturally positive, it makes it hard for people who are perhaps not naturally so positive, and I'm a high energy person. So the two together, the club tells me, is what keeps them going. So it's positivity, and I will just say for always, there is always a silver lining to any bad situation. You just have to find it and promote it. And it might be just one little step forward, but don't look at all the negatives as the first step. Find the positive and build on that. And when you've done that, some of those negatives actually disappear.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you very much for that, Joy. And I'm glad that you, that bundle of energy, enthusiasm, that's good. I might need to plug into that myself with you at some stage. Thank you. Now, that's really, really interesting because, you know, the point I want to make here, and I see some other hands up, I'll go to that in a moment. The point I want to make here is, as a leader, people are watching you. When a guest comes into the club, the guest is watching everybody. They're watching everybody in the club, no matter who they are, because they want to see what the culture of that club is, what they're like, as well as the educational side of Toastmasters. They want to know that they're okay people to hang around with. But as a leader, everybody's looking at you. Even when you think they're not, they are watching you on how you're acting. So are you being positive? And yes, we all have bad days. I'm talking about overall. Are you being positive in that way? So we need to be transferring those thoughts and some ideas. And the person coming in may have their own way of doing that. But you may have found certain ways of, for instance, it may be that, look, the incoming president, they're really good. They're a great listener. Out of everybody who I've ever seen in this club, they're a great listener. So at any time you feel your energy lagging, you know, talk to them, make a connection with them. You may say that, look, I had a mentor outside the club from another club, and I use that. I recommend to you that you find yourself a mentor in some way. So there's different ways that you can be doing that. Now, Anthony, I think you had your hand up, Anthony.
Yeah, hi, Carl. I did. I think at our club, what we found that worked well was we were lucky enough to get some new members come in, and we really emphasised to them a couple of key benefits of the program. And when they could relate that back to the development that they had during the year, it really gave momentum to other people to jump onto that. And it wasn't about just selling the whole thing. It was just a couple of key benefits that we really started to emphasize, and we found that worked well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Now, did anybody else have a hand up that I've missed here, or anybody else want to jump in? Because keeping that fire alight can be a bit difficult, but it's so important.
I put something up on the chat. Persistence.
Yeah, read it out for us, Graham.
Pardon?
Read it
I'll
out.
read it out. Press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unrewarded talent. Education alone will not. The world is full of educated failures. Persistence alone is omnipotent. A quote attributed to Calvin Coolidge, an American president.
All right, thank you.
But it's true. I mean, you've got to hang on in there and keep going. And if you keep going, others will follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really works.
Don't lose your enthusiasm, Jules says there. Absolutely. And again, as leaders, we need to make sure that we are thinking about that all the time, because these are difficult times and we need to be passing that on to the new people coming in. They don't want to be coming into a situation, even if things are a little bit bad with COVID and that, and we've all been back in the Greater Melbourne, just been into lockdown and all that, we still need to keep that enthusiasm going. So they're looking forward to starting this role. Vicky?
I think it's about sometimes just stopping and thinking about why you did this role. And hopefully it wasn't because there was maybe it's because there was nobody else, but hopefully it was because you wanted to contribute something. So maybe just having a think back about why did I take on this role?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you'll hear me say this for anybody who hears me speak. I talk about this so much. I always need to understand the why. Why am I doing this? And those times when it gets a little bit difficult, I always have to come back to the why I am doing this. And for myself, for instance, I didn't join Toastmasters to go into competitions and try to win trophies or something. There's a different reason. And that's why I'm doing the leadership stream of things. And whenever things get a little bit difficult, I always have to come back to that why that's inside. So I'd say the same to you. Why did you take up the role? And hopefully it's not the case because no one else would do it at the club. We need to be growing from that. And it needs to be a reason why. What's our intent for doing that, or why that we can come back to us to keep that momentum going? So very important. Now, I'm just looking at the time. We have about 6 minutes left. Let's ask this question. I'm going to ask you to do a really flash survey. So I'm going to give you a minute or two just to think about this. But for your role, I want you to think, what are the top 3 things you need to be passing on to the person coming into your role? Just the top 3 for now. What do you think is so important with your role that they need to know? Write that down on a piece of paper. For the incoming people, what are the top 3 things you need to know? What are the top 3 things you need to know or that you need to pass on to that person? And I'll just give you a minute or two to think about that. And we'll just get a little bit of an idea across the board here, some of the things people are looking at. If we had a pyramid, these 3 things would be at the top. The star on the Christmas tree, if you put a star on the Christmas tree. Can I just give you another few seconds? These are the first things that come into your mind. Okay, would someone like to share those top 3 things? Can you please say if you're an incoming or you're an outgoing? Can you tell me what the role is and then what those top 3 things might be? Anybody? Jessica?
So I'm an outgoing VPE at my club, and the top 3 things that I wrote down were free toast host agendas, how to create them, how to start planning contests since those are right around the corner, and how to submit educational awards through TI.
Fabulous. That's great. Now, 2 things that jumped out at me there were why they're important. Contests, that's quite a long range thing. The sooner you start thinking about that and organizing it, the better off you are, rather than leaving it at the last minute. And also that submission of those education awards, that's very member focused. That's all about the member and making sure we're getting their things through smoothly. So they are very important things to have at the top of that pyramid. Thank you, Jessica. Who else would like to share their top 3? Kate.
As an outgoing VPE, I was actually looking slightly more differently to what Jessica just did. And that was to keep in mind members' goals when planning the agendas, remembering that your enthusiasm will breed enthusiasm within the club, and also that things will always change. Doesn't matter how much hard work you put into getting that agenda together, on the night, it will never be the agenda that you put together.
Indeed. Thank you, Kate. Good point. Let's have one more top 3. Someone who perhaps hasn't talked before. Adam, what's your thoughts?
As incoming division director, my 3 will be similar to some of the things that have been said before. So when to start planning for contests, and also training. So 1 and 2. And then the other one would be how to motivate my area directors to get those reports in on time.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Yeah, absolutely. Motivation is so important for some of those leadership roles that we are talking about. Great. Now, you've had a little bit of a start there. Now, I'm going to share something with you. This is the resource I was talking about a little bit earlier. Let's just get my screen share with my other access here. There we go. So what I've done is I've put a template together around a role transition plan to help you. So some of the things that we've talked about today, the 10 points, I've got them here just to remind you. And then we go into a transition plan. Now this again is a framework to help you. So it's going to look at you capturing here, what are your main tasks and responsibilities? What are the top 5 things that really this person must know this, or as an incoming, you must know? What are the key resources that they should be aware of? And we've already talked about some of those centralized places where we have that information. There may be other things, particularly on the TI website or the district website, where that you may need to access. And also, what are the human resources? What people do they need to know? Now, it might be within the club, working closely with other people in the club or on the executive, but it may be also outside of the club or at a district officer level. What other people in that different pyramid levels do they need to be very close to? Then useful advice. What is general advice that you've picked up during the year that would help them? As well as that role continuity. List some of the things that are ongoing that should really need to keep going, but may also need discussion with the executive. Then what are the successes of achievements? What went well during the year? And perhaps what were the weaknesses and improvements that could be done around the role? And a good example here may be the hybrid meetings that you're having at the moment. There may be some improvements that could be done around that if you're having it. That, we've only just started. And what are the key dates? And certain rules have very hard dates that they've got to get in. They're stake in the grounds that you have to get reports in, area director reports, things like this. And as we talked about before, the role maintenance. What did you do throughout the year to keep your enthusiasm going around that role? The initial support, how are you going to do the initial support for that person over the next month when they come in? Is it going to be telephone calls? Is it going to be face-to-face in a club, just to keep your eye on them and make sure that they're confident? But remember, you also have to let go of the role as well. There's not two people doing that role. There's only one person, and that person may be doing it different to the way that you did it, and that's fine. It's okay. And then any other items that you may have forgotten that you just want to put it here or was not captured in the other sections that we've looked at. And at the end there, you get a whole lot of resources, some articles there from Toastmasters on transitions and handovers, as well as the leadership book, etc. Now, if Graham hasn't done it, and I need to check my chat, Graham, can you put that link up, please? This will be the link now to that document I've just shown you that's been produced by the district. And you can just copy that. I will also get it put up on the District 73 website. We have a couple of other documents around hybrid meetings up there and something else, which I can't remember that was done now, but there's a few documents up there. This will go up there as well. And if you really can't find it in any way, just send me an email, pqd@d73.toastmasters.org.au will come through to me at the moment, or the next person, and we will then be able to send that out to you. But there's a link there for you to be able to get it at the moment as a file from this particular meeting. Any final questions before we wrap up? Any observations or points you might like to make?
Carl, can I just mention something about the contests?
You can.
We will be sending out some information to everybody. Just got to wait and see how that happens. But the advice we've received from TI is that, as always, your club contests are your decision, the club's decision. But beyond that, it will be a decision made by the DEC, the District Executive Council, as to how we move forward with our contests. So that will involve Carl and his team. But that's just to fill you in on where we're at with it. So that's the advice we've received from TI. So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for that meeting that we'll be having in July and the outcome from that. All right, everybody, thank you very much. As a reminder, please remember to register and turn up for that club officer training or district officer training. It's on the events calendar that Graham put up the link for before for the COTS, and you will be getting the links and all the information around the district officer training in the near future, which is finalizing the booklet and the things that go with that. I thank you very, very, very much for turning up today, coming on this weekend to participate in this. And I thank everybody for also participating around this little cafe environment that we've had here. I've really loved some of the ideas and insights and experiences that you've shared. And I hope other people have been writing that down or remembering some of those things, because we've had a wealth of information and knowledge here. And I wish you all good luck in your coming roles for the year. I look forward to working with you and really doing some good stuff in the district this year. We've been through a little bit of a dark period with lockdowns and that. Hopefully we're coming out of this now and we can say we're back, and we're really going to start that face-to-face, in-person connection and build these clubs up again. So I wish you all good luck. And for those people who might not be taking up a role or have done their roles this year, thank you very much for the effort, the time, and the enthusiasm that you've had. It's really, really appreciated. So with that, thank you very much and have a good day.
Oh, can I just ask one last question before you run away, please?
Yes. Yes.
Just a point of clarification. If you're both, and I've put it in the chat, if you're both a presenter at a club officer training and a club officer, in terms of your attendance for club officer training, being a presenter at club officers training, does that constitute attendance?
You have to go to the breakout for your role.
Right. Okay. So if you're a presenter anywhere and you go to your club officer breakout role training, it will be constituted as attendance.
Yeah.
Got it.
As a presenter, I'm
Yep.
assuming you're going to be there for the full course anyway. You're just doing your bit, but you'll be there, so you'll hear the rest. But it's important that you do go to your role for that breakout session, be it 45 minutes, an hour, however they've allocated the time for that particular cot you're at. So you cannot be presenting and then not going to that. Say if you were a president and then you were doing the role breakout for the VPE, that doesn't count. You have to be in that president's breakout room. Yeah.
Thanks.
But otherwise, yes, that would be fine.
Yep. No, just a question that's come up from somewhere else, and I thought what you were saying was the answer, but I really was not 100% certain.
There's a few permutations around once you say come to court, but what about this? And I've got this role. There's a few about them. So yeah, you just have to look at it logically and answer that. And the other thing, just to reinforce, everybody should know this, but if you don't, if you do have multiple roles, multiple different roles, like maybe you're doing a vice president membership and a VPPR, maybe across different clubs, then you have to go to multiple cots for those roles. Now, the main thing as a minimum is that you have to go to the breakout room for each of those roles in a different cot, because you can't be in two places at the same time in the one cot. So just bear that in mind, so there's no confusion that if you're doing those different roles, you do have to turn up to those breakout rooms at different cots, but there's plenty of cots for you to be able to do that. It's online, so it should all be nice and convenient and painless for you.
Thank you.
Great. Can I get everyone to turn their video on and I'll take a quick photo?
Absolutely. Let me just get right.
That's right. Make sure you've brushed your hair, brushed your teeth, all of that stuff. All right. Looks like we got all we're going to get. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. I didn't think about that. You're such a good Zoom master. Thank you.
Zoom master, I've tried to copy and save the chat so I get all the links.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Work.
Normally there's 3 little buttons down the bottom where you can save the chat, but it doesn't appear to be there at the moment.
I can download the files. So I've got Carl's role transition plan and the moments of truth and a couple of others. So I've been able to download those.
I'll be honest.
Carl, will this be up on the website?